This is the new Mini Clubman. It's the Mini for people who like minis but need something a little more grown up, something with space that looks a bit sharper to reflect who they are and what they do now. It's like a cheeky chappy Mini, but not quite as in your face.
Growing up is something I've been thinking a lot about recently. At what point do you stop pretending to be a grown-up and actually become one? When do you stop thinking about cartoons and what have you and start thinking seriously about things like the future?
You'll never enjoy sorting your taxes and bills and what have you. You'll never want to look at pension schemes and getting clever with your money, but you will have to.
There comes a point where spending a night throwing cheap booze down your neck gives way to getting an early evening and trying out a new recipe you found online. You start thinking about having a bigger life, a family, a home, all that kind of stuff. And you wonder whether you spent too much time doing things because they're fun rather than doing things because you should.
My mild existential crisis does have a point, fear not. The Vanilla Mini is a wonderful car. It's small, ace to look at and good fun, but it doesn't exactly scream I'm a grown-up, nor does it have much space. So when you need to make some room for, say, miniature humans, it'll have to go.
Before, if you wanted big space from a Mini, you had to go for a Countryman. And that was, well, a little challenging for some. Or you could try the last generation Clubman, which was great, but it wasn't especially good in the UK, because while you had the barn doors and the big booths at the back, the club door on the side to give access for rear passengers opened directly into traffic. So not ideal for letting your kids out as they're getting into school. But both of them summed up Mini and Mini ownership perfectly. They were cool, they were funky, they were good to drive and good to look at, but they weren't very grown up. Something this, the new Clubman, hopes to remedy.
It has 4 proper doors down the sides and 2 at the rear to access its rather impressive boot space. You do need some space behind you to open them though, but still, it's a neat design touch that makes it stand out. There is a downside to all those doors though.
It's massive, over 14 feet long, which makes it, I think, one of the biggest cars ever made. No, actually, one of the biggest things the planet has ever seen, as this handy graph will now demonstrate. However, all that extra space and length means you can fit an enormous amount of crap in the back. And the cool doors at the back, the barn doors to give you access to the boot, open on the key, which is very cool, but it does come with a couple of downsides. One, they have to be open and closed in a specific order, which can catch you out occasionally. And 2, they add even more length to the car, so you need to park quite far forward to be able to open them. So whatever you do, don't reverse it into a space. It's no great shakes, but something to bear in mind.
Speaking of the inside, it's like seeing a parent in their work gear, familiar yet different. All the details are here, but they're a bit less Mini-ish and more BMW. Personally, I miss the vents and switchgear that mirrors the Mini wings, but I can see why some wouldn't mind their absence.
Looks and size and what have you aside, this is the Mini Clubman Cooper S. It's got a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine with 189 brake horsepower and over 200 pound-foot of torque. 0 to 62 takes 7.2 seconds and its top speed is over 140 miles an hour. Now, yes, I've said it's a bit bigger than a hatch, but it's also supposed to be that little bit more grown up. So the question is it? Drive-wise, it does feel like a bona fide Mini, which means it's quite fun, it's quite peppy, it steers really nicely. You know, you do know where the wheels are, and the wheels are, as they are on every Mini, at each corner, so you can feel where it is on the road. You do feel its extra length. You really do, and you do have to kind of retune yourself, because in a normal Mini you just kind of put it anywhere you want to and know the car's going to get in the gap. With this, you can't do that, and you have to really get to know the car. You have to look extra long, extra hard, just to make sure that you're not going to clip anything or anyone, say changing lanes or anything like that. Mini's fiddled with the colour palettes for this as well, so you can have the bright colours like you can on the hatch, but also more sombre ones like this and the burgundy you see in the ads. Personally, I quite like to see it in a brighter hue. I think the grey makes it look a bit like a giant chunk of granite. Throttle response is, again, it's a little bit sluggish from time to time, but once you get used to it, it's pretty good. The brakes on this Cooper S, do feel pretty solid. They stop the car when you need them to. Now this has a new 8-speed gearbox. Some people really like it. Personally, I'm not getting on with it all that much, and I don't know why. I can't quite put my finger on it, because sometimes it's brilliant and sometimes it's just a little bit slow, a little bit sluggish, and you want it to choose from one of its many ratios and just stick to it. Now this being the Cooper S, it is the quick one for now, until the inevitable John Cooper Works comes out with many horsepower, and it can feel quite brisk. You can see the speedo gathering numbers, but inside it's not that exciting. You don't feel that pushback, and that's a little bit annoying. I tried a Cooper D a while ago, and that did feel just a little bit peppier. I think it's the torque. It's a wonderfully linear powertrain, even with its turbo on it. There's no turbo lag or anything like that, but you just don't get an enormous sensation of speed. You can fling it into corners and it's good fun at some quite interesting speeds if you're feeling brave, but it just doesn't excite you as, say, a normal hatch Cooper S would, or even the Cooper Works. But the Cooper Works' sole job is pretty much to be exciting. The interior is great, and it does feel more grown up than the traditional Mini of this kind of generation. But I miss the fun. I miss the fun of it. The outside can be more business-like, that's cool, but I miss the wingness of it all. The way it used to look, the way it used to echo the Mini wings. I loved that, and it's kind of a shame that it's not really here anymore, at least not as obviously. There's also a problem with rear visibility, because it's got that barn door thing, which is awesome. I really like it, despite the fact it adds an extra 1,000,000 feet to the back of the car and you can't reverse it into a bay and go shopping. It is great, but in order to make it, I don't know, crash-proof, I imagine, there's a big centre bar down the middle, and you get two tiny little letterboxes to look through, and the wipers can only be so big, so when it's raining and horrible, you just get this tiny little bit on either side of the windscreen at the rear, and that's about it. In the dark, not ideal. It does feel like a Mini. There's definite Mininess in it, but it is growing up, because at the turn of the century, when Mini was launched, it was the fun brand from BMW. Everything was all circles and peppiness and loveliness, really. It was an exciting little car. It was a gateway car into BMWs. Now, though, Mini wants to do that job as well. When you trade in your hatch, you can also get an SUV thing, or you can get a family estate. It wants to be seen as something that's still fun, that still has that edge of, sod it, let's go out for a Sunday morning drive and drive like a lunatic. But also, if you want to take it to a meeting, or you want to take it to see the vicar or your mother, you don't have to go, oh, what's that, because it's all big and dialy and fun and silly. It's more sensible. People can change. They can change their look. They can change their outlook on the world. But deep down, you're always going to have that little flare of fun, that little flicker of who you once were, that kid you used to be that wants to do everything and go out on a drinking binge all weekend. That's kind of what this is.
So it feels like a bigger, slightly less perky Mini. That's not a huge surprise. It's longer, wider and all that, but it's still quite fun. But why has Mini made the Clubman? And why can I hear a few people going, oh, it's not a Mini anymore, is it?
Why the Clubman? That's actually pretty easy. You see, there are people who years ago bought a Mini hatch and absolutely loved it. It fitted into their life perfectly, but as time's gone on, they've needed something bigger to put said life in. Now currently you can get a Countryman, not for everybody, or the 5-door hatch, which might be a little bit too small. So this still has the driving dynamics, but it's a bit bigger and a bit more grown up, and it keeps people in the Mini ecosystem, which of course Mini wants.
The Mini not being small thing, I'm kind of sick of making this point, but here goes. Again. For some people, the Mini is a cool brand based around a car that their parents and grandparents drove. For them, it's not a cheap, easy microcar, but an aspirational car, a step above what else is on the market.
The Clubman may seem like a large step for Mini, but when you think about the logical progression of things, it makes sense. It's the car you buy when you want something with the charm of the hatch, but it's a little bit more business-like. It's a grown-up car for grown-ups who still want to play a little bit.
John Cooper Works. 3 little words that when sat on a Mini mean you're in for some massive fun. They stand for sharper handling, more entertainment and, most importantly,